Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim, page 112. A. Top of the page, we finished the Mishnah at the end of last Amud, and now we're starting the Talmud, top of the page. Gemara, with the words Bishlama. The Gemara discusses the first clause of the Mishnah. Granted that one is liable in a case where he first placed the blood on an altar outside the courtyard and then placed the remaining blood on the altar inside the courtyard. That is because, as the Mishnah explains, as the blood in its entirety is fit to be placed inside the courtyard, but in a case where he first placed its blood on the altar inside the courtyard and then offered up the remaining blood on an altar outside the courtyard, why is he liable? That blood is merely a remainder, and one should not be liable for offering it up outside. The Gemara explains, in accordance with whose opinion is this Mishnah. It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Nechemia, who says, for the remainder of the blood of an offering that was supposed to be poured at the base of the altar, and that instead one sacrificed outside the courtyard, one is liable. Rabbi Nechemia, Ema Seifa, Kibel Dama B'shtei Kosos, Nasan Shneim Bifnim Patur, Shneim Bachutz Chayav, Echad Bifnim V'echad Bachutz Patur. Ve'amar Rabbi Nechemia, Shirei Adam, Shekrifan Bachutz Chayav. The Gemara asks, if the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Nechemia, then say the latter clause. If one collected its blood in 2 cups and placed the blood from both of them on the altar inside the courtyard, he is exempt. If he placed the blood from both of them on an altar outside the courtyard, he is liable. If he first placed the blood from 1 cup inside and then placed the blood from the other one outside, he is exempt by using the blood of the first cup to perform the mitzvah of placing the blood on the altar. He thereby rendered the blood in the second cup a mere remainder. The Gemara asks, how can this clause be attributed to Rabbi Nechemia? But doesn't Rabbi Nechemia say, for the remainder of the blood of an offering that one offered outside the courtyard, he is liable? Seifa Asan Tanakama de Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Dama Kos Oseh Dachui Lechaveiroi. The Gemara answers, in the latter clause, we arrive at the opinion of the first Tana, who disagrees with Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon. As that Tana says, the placement of the blood from 1 cup renders the blood of the other cup as disqualified. Since it is actually disqualified and not merely a remainder, one is not liable for offering it up outside. Lema hadavar domeh, lema frish chatato v'yavda v'hifrish acheres tachteo. Yachar kach dintes harishona. The Mishnah presents an analogy for its ruling. To what is this matter comparable? It is comparable to a case where one separated an animal for his sin offering and it was lost, and he separated another animal in its place, and thereafter the first animal was found. Lama davar domeh lamali hamani rebihi davar avuta b'shas afrosha meisa. The Gemara asks, why do I need to ask, to what is this matter comparable, and provide an analogy to the Mishnah's rulings? What does the analogy add? The Gemara explains, in accordance with whose opinion is this Mishnah, It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who says, see Tumura 22b, a sin offering that was lost during the time of the separation of a substitute, if it is later found, and one of them is slaughtered as the person's sin offering, the other one is put to death. Accordingly, it is actually disqualified from being used as an offering, and one is therefore not liable for offering it up outside. And this is what the Mishnah is saying by presenting its analogy. The reason that one is exempt from liability for offering up this unused sin offering outside is that it was lost at the time its substitute was separated, and therefore is considered disqualified. But if one separated two sin offerings from the outset as a guarantee, so that even if one is lost, he can use the other, then if neither is lost and he sacrifices one of them, the other one is not put to death. Rather, it is left to graze until it becomes blemished, at which point it is sold, and the proceeds used to purchase a voluntary burnt offering. It emerges that from the outset, one of these two animals, meaning the one that was not ultimately sacrificed as a sin offering, is a burnt offering, and therefore if one offers it outside the courtyard, he is liable. The analogy teaches that with regard to blood collected in 2 cups, if one offers up blood from the unused cup outside, he is exempt only because the blood in that cup is considered disqualified. But he would not be exempt if it was considered a remainder. And this is in accordance with the statement that Rav Huna says, that Rav says, as Rav Huna says, that Rav says a guilt offering that was consigned to grazing per the halacha, to leave it to graze if its owner dies or achieves atonement through another guilt offering, and then instead of being left to develop a blemish, at which point it could be sold, and the proceeds used to purchase a voluntary burnt offering, one slaughtered it even with unspecified intent, the animal itself is fit to be sacrificed as a burnt offering. Similarly, the Mishnah assumes that in any case where an animal is consigned to grazing, it is considered fit, and one would be liable for slaughtering it outside the courtyard. Midami, Hasam, Asham, Zachar, Ve'oila Zachar, Aval Chatat Nekevahi, Amarafia, Miostinia. Interesting. Yostinia. Ravchia Miostinia. I gotta get the gematria of that. Okay, Bishar Nasi. Besoir Nasi. The Gemara asks, are these comparable? There, in Rav's ruling, it is logical that the animal is considered fit, as a guilt offering is a male animal and a burnt offering is a male animal. So it is possible to bring an animal as the latter, even if it had been designated as the former. Therefore, a guilt offering left to graze is still considered fit. But in the Mishnah's case, just because the animal is left to graze does not necessarily indicate that it itself is fit to be brought, as a sin offering is a female animal, which can never be brought as a burnt offering. Therefore, it should be considered unfit. Rav Chia from Yosinia said, the ruling of the Mishnah is with regard to the goat of the Nasi, which is a male sin offering. Therefore, in a case where it is left to graze, it is still considered fit, as it can be brought as a burnt offering. This chapter discussed two distinct prohibitions, that of slaughtering and offering outside the temple courtyard, and that of offering up an offering, placing it upon an altar outside the temple courtyard. Since they are considered two distinct prohibitions, one is liable even if he performs only one of them, and he is liable twice if he performs both. Hadran alach ashochet v'hama'aleh. May we return to you the chapter of Shochet Ma'aleh, and now we proceed to the next chapter and final chapter of Tractate Zevachim, the chapter called Parat Chatat, Pras Chatas. And without further ado, let's get started. Zog Mishneh Pras Chatas Sisafra Chutz Migito Yechein Soira Mishtaleach Shikri Chutz Pato. With regard to the red heifer of purification that one burned outside its pit, the pit being an excavation on the Mount of Olives, opposite the entrance to the sanctuary designated for its slaughter and its burning, and likewise the scapegoat that one sacrificed outside the temple courtyard rather than casting it off a cliff as prescribed, he is exempt from punishment for violating the transgression of slaughtering and sacrificing outside the temple courtyard. Shne'emal, for the source of this is that as it is written, as is stated, with regard to the slaughter of sacrificial animals outside the courtyard, whenever a man that slaughters outside the camp, ve'el petach ohel moed lo hiviu, kol she'en hoi lavo el petach ohel moed en chayavin alav. Whatever man that slaughters outside the camp and to the entrance of the tent of meeting, he did not bring it to present it as an offering to the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord. Leviticus 17, verse 3 and 4. From that verse it is derived. For any offering that is not fit to come to the entrance of the tent of meeting for sacrifice on the altar, for example, the red heifer and a scapegoat, one is not liable for its slaughter and sacrifice outside its place. It's in brackets. With regard to an animal that actively copulated with a person, or an animal that was the object of bestiality, or an animal that was set aside for idol worship, or an animal that was worshipped as a deity, or an animal given as the price of a dog that was purchased, or an animal that was given as a payment to a prostitute, or an animal that was born of the mixture of diverse kinds, or an animal that with a wound that will cause it to die within 12 months, or an animal born by a cesarean section, any of which one sacrificed outside the temple courtyard is exempt. Shne'emar lifnei mishkan Hashem kol she'en roi lavo lifnei mishkan Hashem en chayavin alav. The source for this is as it is stated, and to the entrance of the tent of meeting, he did not bring it to present it as an offering to the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord. From this verse it is derived, for any animal that is not fit to come to the entrance of the tent of meeting for sacrifice on the altar, one is not liable for its slaughter and sacrifice outside the courtyard. Bale mumin, bain bale mumin kavuin, bain. Okay, this is for blemished animals, whether they are permanently blemished or whether they are. Let's continue on to the next Daf, 112b. And, top of the Amud here, Ba'ale Mumin, for blemished animals, whether they are permanently blemished or whether they are Ba'ale Mumin Ovrin, Shikrivan Bachutz Patur, Bishimon Omer, Ba'ale Mumin Kavuin Patur, Ba'ale Mumin Ovrin Chayav Benotase. Whether they are temporarily blemished, which one sacrificed outside the temple courtyard, one is exempt. Or Shimon says, for permanently blemished animals, one is exempt. For temporary blemished animals, one is liable for violation of a prohibition, but it is not the type of prohibition for which he will receive karet, because ultimately the animal will be fit for sacrifice. Okay, we'll stop here and continue next time.